It is 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific, and we made it by the hairs of our chinny chin chin. It's the No Name Cinema Society. It's our classic, one of our most popular segments, our classic discussion of the evening. And as you can see behind me, we're going big time here. Citizen Kane is our discussion topic for this evening. And one thing that I could is, we were originally supposed to do this in December. Of course, our show got delayed until today. So it was supposed to be our last film of 2016 because in 2016, Citizen Kane celebrated its 75th anniversary. So we wanted to do a special show for it. So we're still going to do a special show. It's 75 years and change old at this point. Before we get to it, let's do our evening schedule. And this is the evening schedule for the evening. Look at me, double talking. So anyway, so we talked about Rogue One. We did a little Star Wars action to start the evening. We were like the last people to chime in about that. Then we just talked about Young Adult, one of our 2011 indies. Throughout 2016, we did 2011 indies. And we might have some more to come. And now it's Citizen Kane time, celebrating its 75th anniversary. Our sound off is going to have some interesting things. Davey and I are going to talk about, we had a Twitter battle this week that we're going to reopen the can of worms on. And I'm going to do a top 5 unlikable protagonists thing. Top 5 in cinema history. So that should be interesting. And I have some announcements coming up as well. So speaking of announcements, why don't I announce my co-host here? And let's see who gets to go first. Our very own, Charles Foster Kane, I have some very loyal compatriots. Ladies and gentlemen, my Jedediah Leland is J Money.
Hey,
how you doing, Jedediah?
I'll take Jedediah. That sounds good. I'm doing well.
Okay, and Mr. Bernstein, Davey Joseph.
All right, I'll take that.
glad you guys are pleased with your assignment. Trivia tidbit.
Yep.
So the trivia is on the broadcast. I said that we were going to be discussing the 75th anniversary of what many consider to be the greatest film of all time, and we can talk about that a little later on. And the Facebook trivia question was something along the lines of the the co-screenwriter of tonight's classic is the older brother of the writer-director of the movie we discussed in episode 31.3, just 6 episodes ago. And so to break it down, the co-screenwriter of Citizen Kane is Herman Mankiewicz. His younger brother is Joseph Mankiewicz, who won back-to-back Oscars, incidentally, for directing A Letter to Three Wives and All About Eve in 1949 and 50, respectively. But the movie we talked about in episode 31.3 is Cleopatra, and he directed that. So that's the connection there to the director of Cleopatra, his older brother, won an Oscar for co-writing Citizen Kane with Mr. Wells there, although he did so when he was drunk. So that's a whole other conversation that we can have another time. About Mankiewicz. Time for a summary. Can I get the speech photo up?
Sure.
We're just on time, it looks like. If I can get that speech photo.
Keep talking. There you go.
There it is. That's my man. Speech photo. All right. It turns out that media mogul Charles Foster Kane has died. And that's how the movie starts. And his last word is the enigmatic rosebud. Newsreel reporter Thompson is sent on a quest to find out the meaning of the word and to try and further understand the man. Thompson interviews the people closest to Kane to put together the jigsaw puzzle that was his life. How's the summary? Be honest with me.
Yeah, you completely summarized the movie.
I did that off camera. This is what I did. I did, like pump fist. I like positive reinforcement. You have no idea what it means to me to please J Money. All right, so let's see. Let's go opening thoughts, and let's go with first of all, is this a first screening? This isn't a first screening for either of you, is it?
No.
No.
Okay, Davey Joe, take it away. Opening thoughts.
It's it's perfect. It's perfect.
It's perfect. J Money.
I'm gonna say it's actually not perfect, but it's still very good.
Not perfect, very good. So the screening notes. And do you have a Davy scale for perfect? Do we have anything coming up for Davy scale?
I don't think we actually have I don't think Davey has ever said perfect before.
No, he hasn't. I mean, but while you look for that, then I'll talk about the screening notes. So the screening, we did a screening in June of 2016 for its 75th anniversary. So obviously it's a fantastic film, but it's interesting. Everyone expected it to be fantastic. So I mean, like in this discussion that we had afterwards, you know, like a lot of focus was put on the foibles. I think everybody was like, it's amazing. It's clearly amazing. But I bumped on this and I bumped on that. And like they started that's sort of a snowball effect of listing a lot of the foibles. If I can get that photo for, there's the Davy scale. That's what Davy has to think about that. Even the Pope likes this movie. I don't know where that came from. Can I get the photo that says million a year? Perhaps?
I mean, we never get a chance to bust it out, so I feel like, you know.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. We have not gotten the holy shit Davy scale yet. This qualifies though, right, Davy? This is a holy shit for you.
Of course, sure, yeah, definitely.
Davy's only half participating this week.
I had such a good point in the last segment. You agreed with me.
Million a year is the photo I'm looking for. All right, so my thoughts are, this is top 20 all time for me in terms of favorites. That being said, I acknowledge I would call it the greatest film of all time. You know, although it's not my favorite, and I'm differentiating best from, you know, favorite. The film, from the point of view of craft, it puts together everything, all in sync with one another. I'm talking performance, screenplay, cinematography, editing, design, sound, score, makeup, and special effects. And you'd be surprised at how many of these shots are done with special effects. There's about as many special effects shots in Citizen Kane as there are in Star Wars. And the difference being, the original Star Wars, meaning A New Hope, and the difference being they're so well integrated into the movie that it's hard to tell that they're special effects shots. And it's really an accomplishment for 1941. With that said, there's a bonus trivia tidbit for you guys. I still think the one thing it won an Oscar for was the screenplay, and I still think that's the hero of the day. First thing I want to talk about is one of the things that people famously talk about. I just got a text saying I'm doing great.
Hey, all right.
And the person that texted me, I would like you to know that Davey would like you to follow him on Twitter.
Back.
Apparently, everyone is doing well on the show today. That's with a thumbs up. So I'm getting all sorts of positive reinforcement. That's what I like. Keep it coming, audience. I lost train of thought. I'm all flushed by the positive reinforcement. Narrative structure. That's the thing. Newsroom is the photo I want, and narrative structure is the thing I want to talk about because it's so unique. It was very famously unique when it first came out. In sort of like the newsreel gives you the whole story within the first 10 minutes, and then they go back and sort of peel away at that onion a little more. Fascinating choice. Where do you guys stand on this sort of the structure of this movie?
I absolutely love the way he did that, and the way that it goes in and out of the reel. It's just so cool. This movie was it's just ahead of its time, and it's one of my favorite aspects of the film is how it kind of jumps back and forth like that.
Well, no, I mean, like, I don't feel like it jumps back and forth at all.
Well, it does.
No, it does. Sorry. I mean, it's interesting, the interview structure. Yeah. I mean, because once we see the whole newsreel thing, the flashbacks, once they're doing flashbacks, they're sort of chronological in a way, aren't they?
Yes, yes, they are, and it's cool because he jumps into these interviews, and it would have been really easy for that to feel awkward or almost too perfect, but it just feels smooth. It's really smooth, and it is chronological, and it's kind of crazy how it worked out that way. And if you spend,
it is, and it's contrived theoretically, but it doesn't feel contrived.
No, it doesn't.
And I had another viewer just chime in right now. We're getting lots of feedback. I love it. They really like my hat. And interesting. I wore this hat today because this is the hat that I wore when I was given when we went to see Rogue One. was a
You were
Christmas
given-
gift.
you were
It was
given the
in
hat?
Rogue One. What's that?
You were given the hat?
Yeah, it was a present.
Oh wow, you get presents
Yeah, from
at
friends.
Christmas. Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
The holidays and stuff. J Money, narrative structure.
Yeah, it's interesting because this time around I was thinking about whether or not that was an intentional choice to sort of clue into people as to who they might be specifically referencing in this movie. I feel like in some ways they were
Do we want to open
explaining.
that can of worms?
What's that?
Do we want to talk about Hearst? Do we want to open that can of worms?
Well, I don't know if we want to talk about Hearst much, but I mean, we can say that this movie was based on famous publisher Hearst, and a lot of his indiscretions and a lot of things that happened in his life.
There's some other people that he's referring to as well.
Yes.
Hearst never built an opera house. Like there was another person who built an opera house. Like there were other. It wasn't just Hearst, but Hearst is the one that latched out, and that's why it's not a complete myth, but it wasn't just Hearst. But there was other people as well.
Well, I mean, I think the direct connection between the affair and certainly the connection between the actual newspaper man and everything else.
Well, and also there's a connection between the word rosebud.
Yes, I read about that connection.
Yeah.
If we're talking about the same thing.
David, do you know that connection?
No, I have no idea. What tell me about it.
Herman Mankiewicz was very good friends with Marion Davies, who was William Randolph Hearst's mistress. She was an actress. It's a long story, but his nickname for her labia was Rosebud.
Her clitoris, specifically.
I understand it to be labia. But anyway, it's true. And so Marion Davies was a drunk. Herman Mankiewicz was a drunk. They drank together at, I forget the name of the, San Simeon was the name of Hearst's version of Xanadu. And they drank together, and Mankiewicz, she confessed this to Mankiewicz, and then all of a sudden it's in a screenplay. So anyway, you got a flare on the bottom of your screen there, Tiger.
It's a lens flare. I'm trying to be a little Abrams about this.
Oh, welcome to Star Trek. Okay, so anyway, yes, you were saying you were talking about narrative structure, and we went on.
This time around, in some ways, it struck me that perhaps it was in some ways a way to clue in the audience on the references, to some degree, because I think it's interesting that he does lay out the entire...
the newsreel footage itself, the opening.
Yeah.
So you're saying like it gives them a roadmap for the movie?
Yeah, but I also wonder if it was to try to slightly nod to certain figures that he's referencing in real life.
Well, even if that newsreel wasn't there, you would still get the connection to Hearst and the others.
Well, certainly by the end of the movie you would have, but I just wonder if he was trying to set a tone early on, like within the first 10 minutes of the movie. It's interesting because to me,
what I think what it's about is it was to suggest that you can't define a man, by, within like an obituary. Like you can't tell the story of a man in that format. That is a very superficial way to look at a life. But I think that was the point of the newsreel footage.
Sure, and it also set up, sort of the basic contrivance of the way that he ran his life in a way, right? I mean, it talked a lot about his the way that he controlled information and media, and it talked a lot about the way that you can't really get a full, like you're saying, the full picture, I guess. Ultimately, it's funny because the first time I saw this film, I think I was 12. And it was really jarring for me that first 10 minutes. I really didn't know how to take it, and I really didn't know how to react to what the movie was going to be, because for a while I was unsure. I thought perhaps this was maybe what the movie was going to be like. I thought maybe it was really going to be like a lot of
newsreel, yeah.
And I remember how much that was so unique to me at the time. For a movie that was has so much history to it, even that part of it felt very unique to me.
Yeah, and I mean it's still unique, and I think it's great from a storytelling point of view too, because it's sort of, I mean, I guess this is almost a different way of putting my other point, but we know everything that's going to happen, but every time something happens that we know it's coming, it still feels fresh and new. We see the details of it, and it's invigorating to see how they peel away at it like that. I want to segue to the characterizations a little bit, and the photo I'm looking for is Mirrors coming up, because I would like, I think the characterization of Kane is fascinating. The depth of Kane, because he's sort of portrayed, for all of as angry as Hearst was, about this movie, and he was partially angry because the way that Susan Alexander is portrayed. But as angry as Hearst was, I'm almost moved by the loneliness of Kane here, and you know, like I feel like as much of a demagogue as he becomes, I feel sympathy for him. Do you guys feel that?
Absolutely. I don't think he's supposed to be an alienated character from the rest of the audience. I think that we're supposed to go through emotions with him to some degree. And
make no mistake that as the movie went along, the movie became less about Hearst. I mean, like, Kane is a lot closer to Orson Welles than he is to Randolph Hearst from a personality point of view.
And also, I mean, ultimately, it was sort of tragically accurate for Orson Welles and his life in general in a lot of ways.
No, I mean, like, it's sad. It's spooky.
Spooky, yeah. It's sadly spooky at this point.
Yeah. Can you tell anything on the characterizations? I mean, like, what we're saying about, you know, like the depth of this character that he's so, you know, he's so strong willed and you know, a bully to some degree, but at the same time, deep down, he's like a lonely little child.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a humanity that Wells teases out of him, and it doesn't feel contrived. It doesn't feel forced. It's
and I think Wells understood this character as, like, again, like, it's interesting the way historically that it's, you know, like, people say that it's some sort of like attack on Hearst, but I mean, like, I feel like it empathizes with Hearst to some degree.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So with that said, I want to talk about the other characters, and I think Singing Along is the next photo.
Can we cycle back to this for a quick?
Sure, please.
Because ultimately, I'm going to say something that's probably not going to be very popular, and it is perhaps my biggest concern with this movie, which is that I don't think that Kane is actually given a strong sort of impetus to act the way he does the rest of the movie in the beginning of this movie. I don't think that Wells actually gave us enough background in Kane in the early years to see why he became the way he did.
Which way, like, when you say the way he did, can you be more specific? Because I mean, we were just talking about how, you know, three-dimensional the character is and how deep. So you have to be more specific, I think, in what you're referring to.
I do think that the character is three-dimensional, and I think that you see him develop when he's already formed into a guy that has a grudge to how he deals with that ultimately throughout the rest of his life. But I don't think that I don't think that Wells really set up enough of a current why he became so embattled in himself to begin with. I think that we have some early scenes that hint at some trauma, basically, or some problem that happened within his childhood. But it's very quick, and it's over quickly. And there isn't really, for me, a lot of setup or really a lot of reason for why he's constantly searching for a reason to get back to that.
Well, I mean,
I feel like you just answered your own question to some degree, and I feel like the last shot answers that question, and that's what I think is great about the movies. It doesn't need those extra scenes, because I feel like the image of the last shot, and I feel not the last shot. I think there's but the famous what's remembered to be the last shot, the shot in the fire. I mean, I think that image is very powerful, and I think the rest can be inferred. I think it's actually very efficient storytelling not to have those extra scenes. I don't think you need it, because I think I have my own interpretation of what that is. I bet you Davey does too.
Well, I think that the scene
to actually go on that.
The scene with his parents, he's kind of trying to be his mother, saving the world from his father. And you know, I mean, that's an oversimplification, I think, but it's kind of, you know, she's basically just getting him away from his father to save him. And so he's trying
but in exchange, you know, like, there's a lost innocence there. There's like the loss of a childhood, like an actual childhood, and that's what he's always trying to find. And
I know that's what Wells is trying to suggest. I don't think he actually showed it. That's my concern.
Yeah, it's quick. I mean, you're right.
I disagree. I mean, and I disagree because I feel like the iconography, you know, like, has that impact. Like, I feel like that lands for me.
Okay, now hear me out. The reason I give it a pass is because I feel like Wells himself was a pretty young dude when he made this movie, and I feel like it's
25.
maybe he relied a little heavily. Like I feel like maybe he
Well, I
leaned
mean,
on.
and not just that. I mean, like I have to say, it was. I mean, like that childhood, the Colorado Load and all that stuff. That was Wells's childhood. That was more akin with Wells's childhood than it was with Hearst. Hearst, was not shipped off anywhere. Like his family was rich and from the beginning, and he was well brought up kid. Wells was the one that like had this weird childhood and was a prodigy from a young age and was sent off to boarding schools and things like that. And like literally he was a prodigy at the age of 14. So
well, this has something to do with Hearst at this point for me. I just feel like in general, Wells doesn't really give enough reason to care about those early formative years that we're seeing that are the reason that Kane becomes the way he does later on. I think that I don't think there's enough there. I think honestly, again, I'm going to say I think it's because it's I don't want to say it's a freshman mistake. I think it's Wells is a younger guy at this point. I think he's relying on some kind of a lot of inferences you get from the character later on. I think he's relying on I guess to your point, iconography about the idea of him being split apart from his parents and things like that. But I don't think there's enough. I don't think he shows enough emotional distress.
I disagree. I mean, like, and I'm going to refer to a scene where he sort of meets Susan Alexander. Do you remember what he says when he sort of tells her where he was off to?
I don't remember the exact quote, but I know what you're talking about.
Well, he basically saying I was off to a warehouse to see if I could find some stuff from my youth, and the way he delivers that, just from a performance point of view, and I've seen it a number of times, so maybe. I
understand that there's a sense of him trying to recapture his youth the entire movie, but there's no reason why he would want to.
I think it's about love. Honestly, I think it's about searching for, and in all his relationships, I think when he's not loved, he he doesn't feel loved, he will do something to get your love, regardless of the consequences. And I think it's always searching for love because it was hard for him to accept that a mother's love shipped him off away, and so he spent his whole life without, the majority of his life. I think he was 7 when he was shipped off. Majority of his life, not having and receiving that love.
But I would argue that
I don't think that I'm extrapolating too much here.
Well, I would argue that the scenes that he showed of him in his youth were entirely loveless as well. I guess that's my point. He's pursuing this idea of, and I agree with you, he's pursuing this idea of love. He's trying to fill his hole.
Did you recognize his mom from one of our previous discussions?
Oh, what was she in? I didn't recognize her.
Johnny Belinda.
Who was she in Johnny Belinda?
Wow.
She was the aunt.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I see that. That's crazy. She's got the whole, she's
also famously the mom on Bewitched, but...
Yeah. Yeah. Well... Anyway, this is a controversial point. I admit that, and I think that it also doesn't necessarily. Look at how many candles are up here. It's not like it changes how I feel about this movie overall.
Candles are a secret.
Nah, it's out. It's out.
You gotta give people a hint here and there. For me, it's like this is a great film, hands down. It's just that I also feel like this is a film made by a guy who was very young, who maybe didn't explore the depths of those kind of things as much as he could have. That's all.
Yeah, well, I disagree with that. Oh, I'm on camera, so I shouldn't be looking down at things. One of the reasons why I think, and I want to jump ahead to finish the review, if we could, the photo. One of the reasons why I think he was able to make such a great film as a freshman, as you call it, is he was a genius. Like I do think that Orson Welles was a genius, and some of his other films go to show that. And I think. And this is I guess the key collaborator, and in the credits there's a very rare credit. You never see a shared card with a director and a cinematographer, but that's what this movie has. This, considered to be the greatest movie of all time, has a shared card between the director and the cinematographer, Greg Toland. We did one of his other movies when we did Grapes of Wrath, same cinematographer as Grapes of Wrath. This movie is incredible for its cinematography, and it took the cinema landscape to a new level. And the number one thing that people like to talk about is deep focus. Everything's in focus. And this is an example of that. This is actually a cheat to some degree because what you can't tell here is this is actually 2 different strips of film merged together. Talk about special effects. This is actually 2 different shots that they put together to make this seem like the deep focus shot because for one reason or another, the logistics didn't work. What did you guys... the other famous things about cinematography, the high contrast. the angles. You know, like I think I have a picture called Low Angle somewhere, and the framing, the way that things are very specifically framed. How did you guys react to the cinematography, which I think helps elevate this movie to a different level?
Yeah, it's fucking fantastic. I mean, everything in this movie is everything is touched in such a great way.
YouTube has asked us to slow down in the language, but so I guess you liked it.
It's fucking great. I believe is what I said. Yeah.
So, you know, PewDiePie here wants to bless it. Davy Joe.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing. It starts off. The first.
There's a whole Davy scale just for the cinematography.
the snow globe. How great is the snow globe? I mean, come on.
Right? Special effects shot though. I mean, like
Absolutely.
they were doing stuff with, you know, film like that was unheard of. Like, yeah, I mean, so the snow globe is cool. I mean, like, I love the deep focus stuff. Deep focus is almost impossible to do in color cinematography, and it requires, and it's also impossible to do on location. It requires so much light. A film that we talked about in the past, if you remember, Dangerous Method, in order to get something that sort of has something similar to deep focus, it did use that diopter lens.
Right.
You know, talking about that.
Right.
Do you guys? I mean, like, so. What was your favorite part about cinematography before I move on?
Like overall?
Yeah, out of all the little things I talked about, is it the focus? Is it the angles? Like what stuck out the most when you first watched it, or at least watched it again just now?
The deep focus really does. It really sticks out. You know, it's funny. It's because I definitely wasn't aware of it like I have been. Like I definitely wasn't as aware of what I've watched in the past as I was this time. Possibly because we've been talking about film so much over the last couple of years. It's in there a lot. It's in there constantly, and it's really interesting. I mean, there's a lot of really complicated like setups. There's a lot of like complicated model stuff. There's a lot of.
It's funny because his decision to do it is sort of based on a false concept. He said, "Well, that's what the eye sees. The eye sees everything in focus," and that's not my experience.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
it also fit. I'm going to say something weird, and maybe it also kind of fit the pacing. The pacing in this movie is, and I know this is.
Well, it's theatrical. Like, I mean, like he brought all his Mercury Theater people from the stage, you know, pretty much directly. I think they had just done Julius Caesar, maybe.
Yeah.
And he just threw them into this movie. None of them had done a movie before. Not one of them.
No, and it felt. It's funny. What I thought about a lot as I was watching this was that it felt very radio in a lot of ways. I mean, there's a lot of.
And there's a lot of radio tricks. And that's why I talked about the sound earlier when I was listening to things. There's a lot of little radio things that they do, cues, radio cues mainly. But one thing that I was sure thought you were talking about the theatricality. I was talking about the framing and the staging, the blocking. Right. Like he would just put the camera down and they would walk, you know, around. But the frame was so interesting that it wasn't boring. Like it was staged like, but cinematic at the same time, and that's what the deep focus brings. Although I just went out of focus for a second, ironically. So anyway, I got to move on because all Davy Joe has to say is like it's pretty good. Well,
let me finish my point about the pacing, the deep focus.
Okay, yeah.
I was trying to say, like, because the pacing itself was very quick and it's on its feet, and you're seeing so many things kind of put together. The deep focus was, in a way to solve the pacing to him. I feel like the deep focus was a way to him to avoid cutting lots of different scenes together, and instead of having like
he wanted to do one shot scenes more or less,
because he's so quick on his feet because he wants to do so many things at once.
And not only that, but I mean, like, it also allowed for, like, if you look at the scene, I don't have a picture of it, but there's a scene where he's signing away a lot of his papers to Thatcher. And he's in the way background, and when he's in the way background, it makes him look super small. Like, they actually built the stage, like, on a bit of an arch, or maybe the arch is the other way. A slope, I should say, so that he looks super small. Like, for the windows to be, you know, like the windows have to be like super high to have that like optical illusion more or less. And then he walks towards the camera and all of a sudden he's like normal size again. And he's so small because he's signing away half his empire. Anyway, so that's a really good point. And thank you, Davy Joe. I'm just kidding. Jim Money did the point. I'm just kidding. You pull up the photo that says Erskine Sanford, if you would, sir.
Okay.
We're running late again. but we've made all our deadlines so far. Like,
Keep talking. Keep talking.
yeah. So it's time to talk about some of the foibles that the audience at my screening brought up. And this was, even though it's such a small role, this was a big one. And, you know, for all his Mercury Theater pals, I acknowledge that Erskine and the characters, and I'm not sure it's entirely on Erskine Sanford here, but, you know, for some of these great performances in the movie, this one feels really out of place. And it's a very small role, but, you know, for whatever reason, it really stuck out to the audiences at the screening. Do you guys have a response?
Well, it's very vaudeville. I mean, it's just a very cartoonish character, you know.
But it doesn't fit. I acknowledge it doesn't fit with the rest of the movie. Do you disagree?
Yeah, but in the same way, it's over the top in a way that the rest of the movie kind of is in general. I mean, I totally understand what you're saying. I totally agree with everybody that you're saying is about. It's just that it didn't ruin anything for it. Doesn't, you know, I don't feel like it's...
I mean, it's so small and insignificant. I just sort of gloss over it. But I see what they're saying. Davey, do you have anything?
It's a caricature. There's no question in it. Yeah, I mean, it's not. It's definitely not a. It's not realistic.
Are you saying that the movie is not perfect then?
Well, I mean, it's a choice. It's a choice. Choice that he made. I don't know.
It sounds like, yes, it's not perfect. The next photo I could use is Old Man Kane. The other thing that they bumped on is, and I disagree with this, they actually had an issue with the makeup. They didn't buy it.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. J Money?
I don't know. I mean, what is their complaint? That it's not like up to 2017 standards? Like, who gives a fuck? You know what's going on.
J Money's Riley tonight. What is going on? I'm feeling a little tipsy myself. I drank so much last night, and now I'm drinking all this stuff. So
complaining about the makeup in this movie is just kind of pointlessly and stupidly dumb. I mean, like, look, you know what's happening. Just give it a free ride. Like, you understand that he's an old man now. What's the issue?
Yeah, they didn't buy it. I think it's actually makeup way ahead of its time. I think it's outstanding. And a lot of what helps sell the makeup, quite frankly, is his performance in the body language that he adopts as a 25-year-old kid. I think it's tremendous. The other thing that the next photo you want to pick up is Thatcher Mad. And these are insignificant foibles, but they, you know, like I told you, the discussion became more about the foibles than anything else.
You know, a movie like this you pick apart because there's so many things to.
That's my feeling as well. The cockatoo. They didn't like the cockatoo, but I love the cockatoo. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that one cut to the really screechy cockatoo.
Yeah, and his reason for doing it was it was getting towards the end of the movie, and he was worried that the audience was going to be bored, so he cut to a cockatoo to wake everybody up.
I mean, the first time I saw this movie was actually in a theater, like in a full screen, and when that happened, it was so jarring. It was so uncomfortable when it happened. It was really upsetting.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. Even knowing his, I don't love the reason he did it, but I think it's fascinating. The other thing is this idea of, you know, like there's this whole montage with Thatcher spikes the lens when they're showing how Kane's papers, you know, are trying to take down his like sort of big business, you know, corporate structure here, and he looks at the lens every time, you know, he looks at a new headline. They felt that, I mean, it's the only time in the movie anyone spikes the lens, and they felt it was disingenuous. And it out of all the greatness of the movie, these small moments, I feel like, I guess they have a higher value. Do you guys, did this bother you, anything spiking the lens?
No.
Okay. And opera is the next photo I'm looking for. Because
all over the place here, but keep going, keep talking.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what happens with us, you know, like a lot of people felt, and this became a big discussion. They felt the singing should have been worse. And my point, you know, in order to land, and my point is, I disagree. I disagree that the singing should have been worse. I think it was part of the point, that it wasn't as, you know, god awful. Maybe it wasn't up to a certain level. Like she wasn't Florence Foster Jenkins,
right?
You know what I mean? But yeah. I think if it were worse, it would be weirder and closer to that Erskine Sanford stuff. Like I think that the fact that it was borderline, you know, I think is part of the point, because it doesn't matter. And maybe I'm attaching some of my knowledge of Marion Davies to this, but you know, Marion Davies was a pretty good actress. She was probably a better comedian, I should say, and Hearst kept producing dramas for her. He kept wanting her to do like very serious dramas. So, you know, she was just probably, and maybe Marion Davies, she wanted to be a lounge singer, I bet. And she was just put in the wrong, you know, place for her to succeed. And I think part of the point was it doesn't, you know, like, it's important that she's not awful. You know, because it doesn't matter how good she is, because people wanted to take him down. You know what I mean? Like she was not put in a place to succeed because of him.
No, exactly. I feel like she was a person who was caught in the meat grinder to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And it's not like because she was talentless or unself-aware. She certainly seemed to be very self-aware. It was, you know, she just wasn't that level of professionalism that he was trying to elevate her to. I absolutely agree with you on this. I think that if she had been a bad singer, it would have been a cartoonish reaction, and that would have been kind of, you know, dumb, ultimately.
Yeah, it would not have been believable that he would have pushed Florence Foster Jenkins to that level. I mean, to make her. But
I also think it's important for the story that she's not terrible, because it's really not about her. Like, all the criticism is not about her; it's more about him.
Right. That's right.
So I don't have a lot of time. We're a little behind, but I do want to talk about themes. Circulation is the is the photo that I'd like. And so, I mean, what would you guys say is, you know, what do you guys take as the overriding theme of the movie? Like, what sticks out to you the most? I've got a couple things here that I think about. But Davey, do you have anything while he looks for that photo?
You know, it's to me, it's just you know, it's the, I don't know how to articulate it. It basically, it's him fighting with his childhood. You know, that's kind of the theme, the overriding theme
love.
to me.
Like, you know, if we're talking about what we were talking about earlier, it's really about love.
Yeah.
J. What do you take away from it?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate what Davy Joe just said, because I'm looking for an image. But you know, it's about measuring a man on his entire life to a certain degree, and about
that actually is one of, like, I agree with that. That's one of my themes as well. I wrote masculinity / legacy. You know, like.
Yeah, but I also feel like it's about a pursuit for something that's impossible to actually achieve, and the way that it unravels and destroys a person as it happens, which I think is a fantastic sort of, you know.
Another thing that we talked about, and the reason I chose this photo is the way it sort of deals with media, you know, in general, and the potential power of media and the potential dangers of media.
It's certainly felt very relevant to right now, considering our discussion
very much
about
so.
news lately.
Citizen Film Forum, you know, one of my favorite places here in New York that we talk about from time to time. A lot of our vlogs are from there. They had a series right before the election of demagogues. They had a whole series of demagogues, and Citizen Kane was one of them. Facing the Crowd, I believe, was another. So, all right. So I'm going to move on to the brackets. If we could, we covered the other. And this is sort of in the media thing, but the other theme I wrote down was privacy. You know, like this concept of no trespassing in someone's life. You know, like at what point do these public figures have to their private lives and so forth and so on. But anyway, let's move on to the classic feature showdown, shall we? We are 5 minutes behind. So the classic feature showdown is essentially we have all these brackets. We have 60s, 80s. We have best picture winners brackets. You know, like the NCAA tournament that Davey is already dressed up for.
Yes. How with this team?
So let me explain to you the rules, or Davey will explain to you the rules once he has a photo to look at, and that will, for you newbies out there that just tuned in for our Citizen Kane discussion, you can understand how these rules work. And I assume J Money's looking for the rules.
Davey Joe, do you remember them off the top of your head? Because that would definitely help in this situation.
You know, they have to be 15 years or older. They have to be.
That's pretty good. Hang on.
Let me see if I can do it. Yeah. People have to. Yeah, there we go.
I gotta change that. I gotta update the year again. This is so ridiculous.
Seating.
You gotta update it 2 times. This is the 2-year-old thing.
Yeah, this is a 2-year-old version. You guys can do the math.
The seating criteria varies from bracket to bracket. Voters are eligible if they see both films within a 12-month period. They must see both films in JB's presence. JB is ineligible to vote unless the vote counts. He can break ties.
I mean, I think you were doing it better when you did it from memory, quite frankly.
From
I have
now
a live
on.
audience here, and they're nodding. So, it was, although we're short on time, we've got 2 brackets tonight. We've got a double. So that's kind of exciting. We have 2 brackets, and the first one's going to be the original screenplay bracket. And this is a newer bracket. Is that the right one?
Well,
That's not the right one.
Well, that's how I do the round 1 stuff, but I can change it up to this. Hang on. Keep talking. There you go. Oh, don't go there.
You did the wrong one again.
This is what happens when you give me to do. Like, I don't have my glasses on, and you're asking me to put up all the photos. I mean, you brought this on yourself, man.
My thing not working? Okay, so this is a brand new bracket. I think this is the first time we've discussed this bracket, is it not?
Probably.
Okay, so this is a bracket of the original screenplay Oscar winners. So we talked, and I think the category was established in 1937. So there hasn't been as many. I mean, like, I think that's 81 of them. So we took 64 of the 81, made a bracket out of them. And the overall #1 seed is Citizen Kane. And so it goes up against 16 seed, The Red Balloon, which was a big surprise winner of the original screenplay Oscar because it is a short film. And not just a short film, a French short film from 1956. So that was a big surprise, beating, you know, things like Baby Doll came out that year. Tennessee, the only original screenplay Tennessee Williams ever wrote. Searchers came out in 1956. The film that we talked about was King and I, although that wouldn't have been an original screenplay. Going through the 1956 films in my head. So The Red Balloon was kind of a big surprise winner in that category, but it's it's a very famous, popular film. And do we have Red Balloon photos somewhere? We do, right?
Yeah, you want to put that up?
Can I get corner up?
Yep.
I don't know if you guys have seen La La Land, but there is a very specific reference directly to the Red Balloon in one of the sequences of La La Land. So anyway, there is a little scene from I think it's a 25-minute film, or maybe a little longer.
32 minutes.
What's that?
32.
32 minutes. So it's a short film, but it won that Oscar, and goes up against the overall #1 seed. It's a delightful little movie. J Money, you just watched it for the first time, right?
I did. I mean, I've known about it for a long time. I've been meaning to see it for a long time, but it was good to finally actually, check it off my list. I found it incredibly enjoyable. I mean, again, as much as I'm a stone cold cynic about everything in general, this movie definitely reached me.
Wow.
I know.
Hugs and the Red Balloon reached him. That's crazy. We're out of time, so we got to keep pressing along. But yeah, we had a really interesting discussion about Red Balloon when I screened it, and I screened it like in addition to another screening because it's so short. I didn't bring people over just to screen a 30-minute film. It's actually one of the films, J Money, that Jen and I watched during our whole year of 1956 films, if you remember, back in 2006. But
it went across off.
Yeah. Davy Joe, you've let your country down.
Yeah, well, that's because I didn't. I stood up for my country. I'm not watching any French.
He did not watch it, ladies and gentlemen. He failed. He did not watch The Red Balloon, even though it's only 30 minutes long.
I'm sure I'd love it. Looks good.
Does it?
Put it on my list.
How do you feel about latex? I know you're a big fan.
All right, so J Money. So yeah, I enjoyed The Red Balloon too. How does it stack up for you against Citizen Kane?
I mean, it's a really unfair fight, to be fair. I mean, that's not really. Look, obviously, Citizen Kane's going to win because it's a fucking movie. I mean, it's ridiculous.
The audience is out there counting the F-bombs. I think the over/under is 6 for the evening, so we're already at 4.
No point to monetizing this video.
I do feel drunk. J Money. So should Citizen Kane win though?
Yeah, I do believe that Citizen Kane should win. I mean, the conceit of Red Balloon is that it's uplifting and it's interesting and it's artistic, but Citizen Kane is groundbreaking in a lot of ways, and
it seems like a big part of those ways. So you can show the winner. The audience also was. Oh, there it is. Okay, good. The audience is unanimous. Citizen Kane did win, and it is the overall #1 seed. It would have been a tough situation for Red Balloon to win, like you said. But I mean, you know, a lot of these films that won original screenplay Oscars, Red Balloon was going to have a tough shot against any of them. But I mean, like, it was good to have on the bracket, though. I think it's important that, you know, we watched it in LA and you got to watch it. So like, a lot of the point of these brackets is to, you know, is to make us watch films that we wouldn't normally watch. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
let's move on to the next bracket. So we have one other one. It's the Best Picture Losers bracket. This is films that have been nominated for Best Picture and then lost. And this is a second round battle. So here's the first round matchup that has already been decided, you know, over the course of the years as we go through. Citizen Kane from 1941 went up against Giant. So Citizen Kane, again, among the Best Picture losers, being considered among the greatest films of all time, is an overall #1 seed. And went up against Giant, which lost Best Picture, also in 1956, ironically enough. In the other bracket, the 8-9 bracket, so those of you, this will look familiar to those of you who are familiar with NCAA hoops. On #8, Apocalypse Now goes up against #9, Double Indemnity. And, you know, Jay Money will bring up the people, the two, obviously Citizen Kane won because we're talking about it tonight. It beat Giant, but you know, the other bracket means it goes up against Apocalypse Now, which is a film that we talked about in episode, I think it's 20.3, 18.3.
So long ago.
Yeah, 19 episodes ago. So yeah, that was 2015. We talked about that one. So Citizen Kane versus Apocalypse Now. This could be a much more interesting discussion. Do you have an Apocalypse Now photo somewhere? You probably don't, do you?
No. No. Come on.
Davey Joe, since you were quiet during the last one, do you have a vote?
I'll go Citizen Kane.
Do you want to say why?
I mean, I like Apocalypse Now, but, you know, Citizen Kane is just, there's every aspect of Citizen Kane, every shot, everything is just kind of neat to me, and I can't say that frame by frame Apocalypse Now gives me the same level of excitement that Citizen Kane does.
It's neat to him, ladies and gentlemen. Jay Money.
I think that Davey Joe actually really said it well. I think that I really like Apocalypse Now, but I'm not excited about it necessarily. Whereas Citizen Kane on a whole, I feel very upbeat about. So yeah, I would probably give it to Citizen Kane in this situation as well.
All right, well, let's see what the audience chose at my screening in June. Yeah, Citizen Kane moves on to the third round, and it'll be interesting as we go. I mean, like, Citizen Kane it's in a lot of brackets. It's obviously in the 40s bracket as well. But as we go through these brackets, it's going to be difficult to beat Citizen Kane. But I mean, you got to think that some of these are going to be like, oof. And that reminds me of my next question, because Citizen Kane, you guys are familiar with the Sight and Sound poll. We talk about it all the time, and it has its own bracket. And Citizen Kane was the first poll came out in 1952, and when that poll came out, people hadn't really discovered Citizen Kane yet. So Bicycle Thieves was named the best picture of all time. In that, they do it every 10 years on the twos, 52, 62. Starting in 1962, Citizen Kane was named the best film of all time. And it remains so 72, 82, 92, 2002. 50 years considered the best film of all time. In this most recent poll, 2012, and we talk about this all the time, it dropped to #2. And the one that beat it is our film we discussed in episode 14.3. So it's not an official bracket, but I need to ask you guys, Citizen Kane or Vertigo?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I've been thinking about that a lot. I might go Vertigo on this one.
Okay, so it is possible for Citizen Kane to lose, it seems.
Yeah, well, my opinion. I mean, I think it's a great movie. I don't think it's a perfect movie.
But Davey Joe does.
I think Citizen Kane.
The battle rages on. I'm not going to opine because I just love that you guys have these opposing positions on this. I'm just going to save it. Maybe they'll eventually hit a bracket together. But Vertigo, incidentally, was not nominated for Best Picture, so that Citizen Kane would be on the Best Picture losers bracket because it was, and Vertigo is the #1 overall seed of the films not nominated for Best Picture. Best films not nominated for Best Picture. Interesting little tidbit there. All right, so that's it. That's good. We did it. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's it. I was going to ask. So I guess obviously the answer is no for J Money. Davey, is Citizen Kane the greatest film of all time?
I mean, it's definitely not my favorite movie of all time, but it's
I don't think anything's better. Put it that way. There may be movies as good.
Sounds like a yes. It sounds like a pretty strong. I don't know why you have to put it.
I mean, he's basically saying it's tied for first place among a bunch of other movies.
Oh, I see. I didn't.
Yeah.
Interpret it that way. Just,
That's
I
what I
was
said.
enjoying my laughing too much. You just ruined it. All right. So our next classic, incidentally, is where we're going a little bit country. We have a British documentary filmmaker making a country music biopic. What? Yeah, that happens. And that's our next classic. It's going to be January 16th. Classic is always at 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific. And guys, I don't know about you guys, but I'm boning up for our 1966 in Review show coming up February 23rd, where we're going to talk about all the films from 1966, which celebrated their 50-year anniversary this past year. I've got this little book here that I might give away at the Golden Globe party. So I'm doing my research. It's very exciting stuff going on here. Watched a lot of films that I'm announcing on Twitter when I'm watching these films. So if you've seen some of these films that I'm watching, I'm curious to know what you guys are thinking about. I'm not these guys, you, the audience. So now we're going to do our sound off, and that's going to come up in about 9 minutes. I think we can make that, guys.
Yep.
So 9 minutes, we do our sound off at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific, and our sound off is our freeform segment. And coming up in the sound off, we're going to I'm going to do my top 5 unlikable protagonists of all time. And that's going to be an interesting discussion, I think. Davey and I are going to renew our Twitter battle. And I have some announcements to make in a newish segment that I didn't tell anybody about. So that's coming up very shortly as the 37th meeting of the No Name Cinema Society continues very shortly with the sound off.